Hey, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to our, I'm going to stay 6 feet away. Take my mask off because it's a little easier to see what's going on and hear me online. So we want to welcome those of you who are here in the room with us, those of you who are online. We have 20 or so people online right now. Welcome to this neighborhood meeting for our Area 2 for Imagine If. This is a really exciting project for us. Just to make sure, if there's somebody watching WebEx here and can see some participants, can we just get somebody to say whether or not they can hear us okay? Just do a quick audio check. You can put that in the chat. You can unmute yourself, tell us.
Brad, this is Natalie Black. I can hear you fine.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalie. I'm sure you in the room can hear me because I feel like I'm down. But if you can't, just wave your arm. So again, welcome. We're happy to have you. This is an interesting format, having in-person and web-based. It worked fairly well last week, so we hope it continues to work okay. So I just want to point out that we really value your input. We really value you being here. This is an important project as we talk about growth and change in Idaho Falls, and we need to do this together as a community, not just our staff, but engage with you. So thank you. That's really my first and primary message, is to say thank you. One thing, could you please click the mouse on the PowerPoint, and then this will work. It's a little finicky. There we go. Okay, so we've only scheduled to go 75 minutes on the calendar. We did learn that we might spill into 90, is what we've learned. We hope that you can engage with us for that long. But to help us keep focused, I just wanted to run through this very quick agenda. So we're going to spend just 5 minutes or so talking about what Imagine IF is, and then some of the challenges of growth that we're facing in the city that we're aware of. And then we want to get to know your neighborhood. We know that you know your area intimately, and we don't. We don't live there. Although I will say, this is the neighborhood I grew up in. And so there are still people and places there that I love, and I visit there regularly, so I feel very familiar with Area 2. But we want to get to know it from your perspective. What are the challenges you see? What are your concerns? And then we have 3 topics of conversation that we want to have with you, talking about healthy communities, talking about housing, talking about transportation, connectivity, and then we'll wrap up. And in the wrap up, just as a spoiler alert, I suppose, is we will ask the question, what have we not covered that you wish we would have? What do we want to do next time? Because we will be coming back out and redoing these neighborhood meetings again in the late summer. So let's talk about the ways to participate this evening. Just like any neighborhood meeting or any public meeting, you can comment verbally and participate verbally. That's fine. If you're on WebEx, we would ask that you, although keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. If you want to speak, there's a raise your hand feature you can see here on the screen where that is. If you'll click on participants, you'll see your name and a little raise your hand.
Have some tuna. That would be like taking food out of poor people's mouths. So that's
that. If you hit mute all, you might mute us though. Sorry, we have some early meeting jitters on these. Okay, are we muted? Okay, so if you'll just click raise your hand, then we have a staff member watching WebEx. And they'll recognize you, and you can unmute and go ahead and speak. If you're here in the room, just raise your hand. We'll get you in there. If you want to just use the chat feature on WebEx, just type something in the chat. That might be easier than trying to engage verbally. That's fine too. So you can type in a chat message, and our staff group. You can do the same on Facebook. So for those of us joining us on Facebook Live, we have a staff member watching Facebook Live comments. So we would like to make sure that everybody gets a chance to participate. And now I need you to click on the PowerPoint again. Sorry, there we go. If you are using the chat feature, here are some quick instructions on how to do that. In the lower right-hand corner, you can click on chat. You can type the message, make sure you're sending it to everyone so we can all see it, and it all stays in the same place. And then we will go ahead and read that as part of the record. Now, I will point out that everything that happens here tonight is part of a public record. And so just keep that in mind as you're making comments. If there's anything you don't want on public record, don't say it here, because this is a public meeting. Okay, so the third way that we're going to engage tonight is through a feature called Poll Everywhere. And this has worked out really well for this dual in-person and online. setup. So I just want to talk quickly about how to use it. The best way to use it is with a mobile device, if you have one, or if you're on a computer at home, if you want to open up another browser window. We're going to ask a lot of questions that will populate live up on the screens here. And so we'd love for you to participate that way. Now, if you are here in the room, or you don't have a mobile device or a second screen at home, don't worry. If you'll just answer the questions anyway, we have a staff member assigned to enter those. They're in another room. They're listening in just for that purpose. So you will see your answers pop up on questions that look like this. Now, as we're on these questions, there are 3 things you need to know. One is that you can enter as many answers as you want here in this space that you see circled on the screen. So enter something, push enter, and or hit push submit, and then you can do it again. Repeat as many times as you like. The second thing to know is that you can agree or disagree with other comments being made. So if you agree with something that shows up on the screen, and it'll show up here in the room, it'll show up on WebEx, and it'll show up on your device. Then you can click a thumbs up if you agree, you can click a thumbs down if you disagree. And what that does is it helps with consensus building. What are most people thinking in the room? And those answers will start to rise to the top. The third thing is that as you're looking for comments, this area here circled in red, right now it says all caught up. But as more people enter, that will turn yellow, and it will say load more questions, load more comments. You can tap on that and see what other people are saying, and then you can agree or disagree. So not all of the questions will look like this, but a lot of them will, and they're meant for discussion, and so it does allow a lot of people to participate. So now here's how to join. If you have those mobile devices, this is the time to pull them out and get logged in. Or if you have that other browser window, go to pollev.com, and you can enter Idaho Falls. And you should see a link that says Start Survey. Or you'll enter your name. If you're having trouble getting past that point, let me know. Now you can also text your answers for some questions. For some you cannot. So the ones where you're liking and disliking other answers, you cannot use texting for that. So we do recommend going to pollev.com and entering Idaho Falls. So go ahead and go there now, and we're going to just start with a question that will help us get started and get used to this system. Now, if you don't have a device, this is one of the questions that we do not have the ability to answer for you as staff. So for those that are logged in, go ahead and tell us which area you live in. Go ahead and tap on that answer. This is really just meant for you to get logged in and experiment with the system. You should see this question live on your screens. Is this working here in the room? For the 2 folks that are here. You're seeing this, okay? Yeah. So again, on this map, you can go ahead and enter, tell us where you're from. So this does a couple of things. Oh, there we go. We got outside the area. It is getting us logged in, but it's also an opportunity for us to understand how the answers correlate. As we move down through the questions, we'll see if people in different geographies of this neighborhood are answering questions similarly or differently. Now, if you didn't get all the login instructions, don't worry, because every single question will have these instructions on the top. It'll have that website, it'll have the phone number, and how to respond. So there's still opportunity to log in as we go through the presentation. So while you're experimenting with that, I'm going to click to the next slide. This question is still live, so you don't have to worry about that. And were you seeing any comments on WebEx or Facebook? Anyone struggling? Okay, we're good. All right. So let's spend just a couple of minutes talking about ImagineIF and what this is and why we're here talking with you. It's no secret that Idaho Falls is growing, and with growth comes change. And Idaho Falls is a great place to live, and so we don't want to lose that as we grow, especially in established neighborhoods where people are familiar with where they live and they love what they live, where they live. But things happen, and neighborhoods evolve, and cities evolve. So we want to talk about, as growth happens and change happens, how that gets managed and how that happens in the right way, so that we can maintain that quality of life that we all enjoy. And when we talk about growth, these are just a couple of data points that we've been looking at. One is population growth. I mean, Idaho Falls has been growing since it began as a city, and you can see that on the left-hand side of this slide. On the right-hand side, this is how much land we are using per person. So you can see that is also going up. And what that results in, if that trend doesn't continue, or if that trend continues and doesn't change, that is what leads to things like sprawl. Sprawl is more infrastructure and more cost and higher taxes, and all of those things that we typically don't like. So we want to talk about that as a concern from the city's point, is how do we think about our land in more efficient ways as a starting point? Because Idaho Falls is going to continue to grow because we have resources that are bringing people here. For starters, as we think about COVID and what it taught us about working from home, working remotely, and we think about the great infrastructure through our fiber network that we're providing as a city, people are going to come here because it's a place that they can work remotely. It's the INL that supports so many jobs and has so many exciting projects on the horizon. There are people coming here because of that, and other great opportunities economically as well. It's a place that offers all of this while having access to the most wonderful natural features in the world, world-class recreation opportunities. And then add on top of that, that it's a great place to do business. It's a great place for job growth. It's a great place to move to. It's a great place to live. And I haven't added this in yet, but as you saw in the news a week or so ago, Idaho Falls was named the #1 top performing city in America by the Milken Institute. So this is a place that people have discovered. And they're going to come. So when we ask that question, what do you think about growth? This is the kind of answer that we hear a lot. And we don't necessarily disagree with it when people say, stop it. Stop the growth. Build a wall around Idaho Falls. Don't let it grow. And we take that to mean we love who we are. And we want to preserve that. So that's really the basis of this conversation. We can't stop growth, but we can really work hard to try to preserve what Idaho Falls is and has become. So let's go to this question. Looks like somebody's already answered. Is that question still active? Looks like it. So for those in the room, can you see this question on your screen? Okay, perfect. So what we want to do is ask you about your own neighborhoods. So not thinking about the city as a whole, but thinking about where you live. Tell us what makes your neighborhood a great place to live. What do you love about your neighborhood? And again, so those in the room that don't have the device, if you'd like to answer verbally, we'll enter your answer in for you. Makes your neighborhood great. Anyone online want to comment? So we have good neighbors, urban services, it's close to everything. Any other thoughts?
I like that it's close to everything, services, and restaurants, but we don't have to be in a commercial zoning area.
Okay. So close to services still feels residential?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great. Any other comments in the room? Any other comments online? Nothing on Facebook, nothing, okay. Great. Well, again, this question will still stay live for just a moment. Actually, it won't, because I'm going to change this. So now, as you think about growth, tell me what you're worried about. Tell me what concerns you. It will change as Idaho Falls growth. This is really why we're here. Go ahead.
I am very concerned that East 25th between Holmes and I believe it's Channing will go 4-lane, will be more of a thoroughway for people to get around. And I understand that growth requires facilitation of traffic moving, but to me, and living there, that is a residential area. It's an older community. We're right down from a park there, and that concerns me very much for home values.
Okay. So I heard a couple of things. I want to make sure they get captured by our staff member in the other room. Widening of smaller roads to 4 lanes, so that's specifically 25th, and what the negative effect on property values.
Correct, and the just continual and intense flow of traffic in a residential neighborhood.
Okay. So for the staff in the other room, could we put more traffic in residential neighborhoods as a concern? Did you have a comment as well? Or it's hard to tell, I'm asking this too. Anyone online have anything they want to add? Okay. No, thank you for those comments. So it seems, here we go. Now we're getting some more comments in here.
Go ahead. My concerns with the growth is crime.
Okay.
police force.
Yeah.
Their ability to respond, services, ER services, emergency services, hospitals.
Yeah.
Is there plans to build that as part of the infrastructure?
Yeah, great point. So let me make sure we capture that. Have we seen that pop up yet? So emergency services, police force, hospitals, and capacity for those essential services is a concern. Make sure, though, there we go, increased crime rate. We'll keep having those populated. And so as a, I guess, quick explanation too, what we're going to do is take all your comments now, digest them, and then come back with some options and possible solutions and see which ones make sense to you. So I definitely appreciate the commentary. Keep them coming. Okay, we have one on WebEx.
They say on WebEx that there's a lag with Facebook, so the poll is moving a little quick.
Oh, okay.
There's about a 10-second lag on Facebook between where you are and where the slides.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we'll try to that means we'll just talk a little longer while they catch up. Go ahead.
Something else, something that brought us here is clean water,
Okay.
having water.
Yeah.
Thinking about the future and having enough water to be able to supply everyone that's coming here.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is a huge concern. Absolutely. We talk about that with our water department because even if you have the water, do you have the rights to pull it out of the ground? And there's all kinds of questions around water. That is definitely an issue for us. So I want to make sure that gets captured as well. So we're clean water and available water. Make sure that gets in there. Any other final comments before we? Anything else online? Okay, clean water, there it is. Make sure we get available water. Oh, we have one more.
Catherine Plummer says increasing development without adequate planning for non-motorized transportation.
Okay, oh, perfect. So we're going to talk about that specifically. Yeah, making sure we plan for non-motorized transportation as well. Perfect. Okay, again, thank you for all these comments. To help us keep on track, I'm going to move to the next section, but these questions are still live for those who want to enter comments. So I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about healthy communities because that relates to that last comment. And they relate to your neighborhood. So I want to ask a question. I'll quiz those in the room can answer. It might be a little tricky online, but what's the biggest predictor of your life expectancy right now in the United States? It's your zip code. Shocking. It begs the question, why? Why is your zip code? Why is where I live the biggest determinant of my life expectancy right now? And it comes down to that more and more communities are recognizing that how we grow and build has an effect on our 7 dimensions of health and wellness. And when we talk about neighborhood health, I think our minds automatically go to the physical health, but it's more than that. It's social and intellectual and environmental, spiritual. How do we connect with people? And we can design communities where everyone's forced to drive, or we can design communities where we have the ability to walk safely and bike safely. We can build places where everyone just goes home and locks their doors and doesn't talk to anyone, or we can encourage connection amongst neighbors and provide those spaces for people to gather. We can build communities that have access to daily needs, services, goods, work, education opportunities, or we can make those things difficult to get to. So when we think about health and community growth and design, those are the things we're thinking about. So next question, because I want you to think about your neighborhood again. With those 7 dimensions of health in mind, how healthy do you feel your neighborhood is right now? And this is another one we can't answer on poll everywhere, but if you'd like to tell us kind of where you think you fall, that's fine too. Looks like most people feel pretty good. But not perfect, so some room for improvement. Your feelings about your neighborhood, which is great. Do you feel like you have those places, those opportunities to connect and to be physically active and have access to daily goods and services? So, yeah, seeing something in between there, some more and more people commenting. We took a look at, oh my goodness, I forgot to change the boundary, but we know where it is. So think of it to the right of that red triangle. I apologize for that error. We recently completed a Healthy Communities assessment with a consultant that does this for a living. What he does is he looks at the 60 data points that are the biggest indicators for health risks as they relate to those 7 dimensions of health. And you can see on this neighborhood 2 that it's a mix. And the tier 1 represents levels of of the highest risk. And for this area, although you see that most of yours is actually in tier 4, so very healthy community, good indicators, that's good. With a couple of spots with maybe some need for improvement or some warning signs. Now, some of what we found in those neighborhoods that are in the tier 1 are affordability issues, lower incomes, difficult to access those services. But there's opportunities. You have some neighborhoods with great infrastructure, great services available. And we'll talk about that more moving forward with this project. So I want to ask you though, when you think about your own neighborhood, what could improve your neighborhood's health? What do you think is needed? I like these questions already. Better snow removal, new rec center. Do you have any other comments here in the room? Do you think about that question? Online as well, we're open for that. But we're up to you. What would make your neighborhood a healthier place to live? What do we need? Go ahead.
Well, this is gonna sound so selfish, but I think that the residential area where I live in, 25th, East 25th, is too heavily traveled because it is a residential area, but people are trying to avoid the more commercial streets of 17th and Sunnyside, and I understand that, but as a resident, it's very busy.
Okay, so yeah, residential roads being overly trafficked, unsafe. Yes, sir.
The Chuck holes.
Oh, I agree
potholes.
with that.
Ah, okay.
It's granted, you take and remove snow, you're gonna have some potholes and stuff, but some of them, the whole car just drops down inside of it. You know, if there's a way that we can report it, some way you could say, hey, because I know it's limited staff or whatever to be able to get out and go fix those, especially when it's freezing outside, but some of the worst ones could be filled with, you know, some simple. And again,
So let's make sure, okay, fewer potholes. Okay, see that one, great. No, thank you for that. Anyone else online? Do you have any comments? Okay, we have someone WebEx.
Catherine Lower says more interconnected multi-use paths.
Okay, more pathway, more interconnected, multi-use paths. Great comment.
yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Affordability, we've been looking for a house for 5 months.
Affordability, yeah, which is our next topic, right? How do we address that issue for sure? So I don't know if staff heard that, but yeah, more affordable, the affordability issue overall, but yeah, housing. We work occasionally with a group in Boise that focuses on housing. His comment is always, he always leads with housing is health. If you cannot find good, stable, affordable housing, everything else is that much more difficult. That is a health related issue. Okay, I'm going to give this just a couple more seconds and then we'll move on. So, we have a WebEx comment.
Yeah, Gary Mills says Parkway Islands in the center of John Adams.
Okay, as a street improvement. Okay, great. So islands in John Adams. And hi, Gary. Gary was a planning and zoning commissioner when I first started with the city. So good to have you with us. Okay, great. So let's go on to our next topic then, which is housing. And I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, and I'm going to step out of the room for just a minute. So excited to hear your thoughts on this.
All right, thanks. So my name is Carrie Butler. I'm a planner for the city and look forward to chatting with you a little bit about housing and getting to know what you think we can do to try to improve some of those things. Housing, of course, relates definitely to healthy communities. We know that there's a direct tie to housing, especially housing affordability and livability. It also impacts our health in a variety of ways. And when we look at housing and affordability, livability, home prices and the cost of construction are rising quickly. I think we're all familiar and know that, and we just have to compare past projections with sort of our current reality to kind of understand that. When we looked at projections of the median home values in 2017, it was projecting it to be about 164,000. But what we're seeing from and as our reality today is that we're really more closer to the 250,000 as that median home price. And of course, our office continually hears from real estate professionals and those looking to buy homes, that it's challenging to find, there's limited supply, compared to demand, and everything is very, very expensive. Okay, so this question, is your neighborhood an affordable place to live? Ideas, thoughts here in the room? It sounds like you're looking for a home, so.
The median home value that we're seeing right now for anything that you're looking for, it's
It's closer to 350.
close to 350.
Yeah,
You're talking about double since 2017.
yeah, easily double,
No one can afford that.
right?
Some people can, but most people can't.
It's true, and if we haven't been looking for a home, sometimes we don't understand that, I mean, we're not familiar with what's going on in the world that way. Any other comments? Okay. Okay, so we're seeing several people, the majority saying no, it is hard to find an affordable place to live in my neighborhood. Okay, so now let's think just about the overall condition of housing in your neighborhood. And that just gets to the livability, but you know, the state of homes, the upkeep, the desirability of the neighborhood. Where do you think you're at on this spectrum with regard to just that condition of livability? Yes, please.
I've heard several people that do not live on East 25th state that it's a very pretty street because in the spring, summer, and fall, we have the beautiful trees that are in the middle of the road. And like I said, these people do not live on that street. I do. But they appreciate the beauty of that street, and that is one of my concerns too, with losing the residential part of, or possibility for that street is we're going to lose that too. But even other people who just drive through there really think it's beautiful.
Sure, yeah, there are a lot of really nice places in our community, and that's always the concern is do we see more traffic and other concerns that affect that. Yes,
And we do have older homes on the one side of that street, on the north side of that street. Newer homes are on the right-hand side of that street towards Shamrock Park and into Shamrock Park. But I do think that most people on that street keep their homes up very well, even though they're older homes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a nice looking older community, but I must say, along with these people, to where I have an older home and I got into it at a very reasonable price. It's great for me to have that increase in home value, but for people who are looking to buy, and especially, you know, people who live here and work here, it's very difficult to afford the prices now. I think the prices now pretty much are only sustainable for people who are coming in from outside California, Oregon, places where they're just coming from more economically developed, maybe. Maybe that's not the right terminology, but they have more money.
yeah.
So
The money
they're
goes
bringing their
further
money
here.
into our community, and we can hardly afford to live here.
Great, great. Is there a Facebook comment?
Yeah, so Susan Blakely says housing prices are crazy high.
Great, yes, I think we definitely see that. We're seeing across all the spectrum here as far as where livability is, and then that probably does go somewhat to who your neighbors are and how they keep their home. Let's continue on then. As the city grows, what concerns you about housing in your neighborhood? We've talked about some of these, obviously affordability we've talked about, but are there other concerns that you have about housing in your neighborhoods as things grow? Yes, please.
I think a lot of people are gonna be very surprised. They are happy with how their homes are appreciating, but when they get their tax bill, they're gonna be pretty surprised.
Because then you're
They
the
need
way
to-
the way
they
the
need to
homes are
plan.
assessed through taxes are through the past homes that were
Right.
sold. So the taxes that you're seeing this year aren't gonna be the taxes that will be next year.
Right, yeah, no, that's always a balance we have to keep. Perfect, thank you.
But that also helps build infrastructure.
Right, it does, and again, that's that balance that we have to try to watch. Perfect.
Ooh,
Oh,
So
I was gonna say, can you
how are you
scroll?
scrolling up and down?
Just on the side on that gray bar. Okay, so we're talking online, sorry, some answers to some of the questions, reliable utilities is concerns for sure. Older, larger homes might be converted into multifamily, okay, for sure, we wanna talk about that as well.
Might remind them to do the thumb up, thumb down.
Okay, sure. So yeah, if you're answering the poll and if there is a similar comment that you'd like to make, you can also actually vote for that comment or a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
So I'm gonna interrupt you though, because we just realized that that is not an option when we turned this into a survey. So all you're able to do right now is enter answers. So I apologize for that inconvenience.
Thank you for clarification, great. Okay, perfect. Thank you for these comments. We appreciate it. Let's move on then. Okay, what ideas do you have for improving housing in your neighborhood? What thoughts have you had as maybe you've worried about these housing issues? Have there been thoughts that you had or have seen elsewhere that maybe you think would work?
Those we walked in the city a lot. Crosswalks being painted, things like that, that, they could be brighter. The lines on the streets could be brighter,
Okay,
some of the snow has covered up a lot of the signs. And you can't even see if it's a stop sign, a yield sign, or a
okay.
speed sign.
So there's some safety concerns there, but maybe some amenities or some aesthetics there with how things look, some of the infrastructure, okay? Okay, we're seeing more walkability, a business loop, tree plantings or sidewalk beautification incentives. That comes back to the comment we had in this room regarding the beautification. And then looking at allowing higher density housing, which still allows for home ownership. Great. Perfect.
That bar goes away.
All right. Variety of housing types. So that's a great comment as well. We wanted to talk through that too. Okay. Any other comments on chat or okay? I just don't want to proceed too quickly. I want everyone get good thoughts in. Okay. That will stay up for just a minute. I'm going to just proceed on to this next slide. So some people were talking about housing choice or housing diversity. And as we, as staff, kind of looked at how we might address this, we have gone back to past city plans and our current city plan actually, which was adopted in 2013. And one of the goals of that plan identified was this concept regarding economic and social diversity and being able to foster inclusiveness and connectivity. And that would be through a mix of housing types and sizes, and also providing those neighborhood connections. And so that was a goal that was set out in 2013 with our existing plan. And this next question, how do you feel we're meeting, or how do you feel your neighborhood reflects that goal? Are you seeing the diversity that you had hoped for in your neighborhood, or that connectivity? Different housing types, price points, that sort of thing? Like we're getting some comments sort of middle of the road. Great. Sometimes that's, especially in established neighborhoods, that can be a little bit more difficult. You don't have vacant lots, as it were, to sort of build new housing stock. And so depending on the area of your subdivision, that it might affect how that comes to be as well. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Something we're seeing is that there's so many HOAs that are being built right now. You'd be looking for a home that you're gonna try to build. You can build an HOA, but trying to build outside of that, you need to buy your own piece of properties.
Okay, so it may be that challenge of trying to find what you're looking for.
Our avenues are very, very narrow. You buy a very expensive home, needs repairs, that we would find somewhere else, like from where we're from, at that price, you can find a mansion.
Right.
And live like a king, it had to be perfect.
Okay.
But we're not seeing that. No. We see a lot of compressed housing.
Yeah.
Houses are close together.
Okay, yeah, we hear that in our office too. It's hard to find, I think, what you're looking. Okay? So imagine if the city allowed for more housing choice. And with rising housing costs and changing lifestyles, more individuals are looking for options to fit their needs. And that is something that we hear a lot in our office. Since the 1940s, cities and developers have had zoning and construction finance and other systems in place that were really set out to effectively deliver that single family home. That's what we see most common, what we see built most often. And single family homes actually make up 91% of the housing stock in Idaho Falls, so it's definitely majority. Apartment buildings, which would be on the other end of the spectrum, are also fairly straightforward when it comes to trying to develop and finance those. And this is left as gap in the middle, which we refer to as missing middle housing. And that's where we see a variety of housing types, which reflects then into a variety of housing price points, and trying to meet people's needs, what they're looking for. And so with rising costs and that change in the lifestyle, people really are looking sometimes for something a little bit more different. So how would you feel about increasing housing choices in your neighborhood? Some of those options, or having more choice. Would that be something that would be encouraging for your neighborhood? Would you see that as a positive, or would you find that to be more of a negative? Yes.
I personally would feel it is a negative in my neighborhood.
Okay.
We're an older established neighborhood, and everyone that has purchased there obviously intended for single family homes to be there. And that would be our environment.
Okay, sure. I mean, it makes sense. You choose a neighborhood according to what you're hoping and wanting for, right? We are seeing line a little bit, everyone kind of across the board, which is also to be expected. Yes.
Something that we're seeing in our area, that they're building, I guess, low-cost housing, up the street on First. Right, they're building multi-family homes or apartment buildings,
Okay.
which, we're just a few blocks away from that, which, from where we're from, that's your high crime rate, which is low-cost housing.
Okay.
You know, people who are living on a low cost or fixed income,
Right.
it would lower our carbon bill.
Okay. And there can be more of a negative persona for some different housing types, for sure, depending on what your experience is, what you've experienced elsewhere in your life. Yes, on Facebook.
So we have Greg, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the last name, but he says, like to see canal banks repurposed as green belts. And then Susan Blakely says there are new townhouses being built on John Adams.
Okay, yeah. We're aware of those townhomes on John Adams, for sure. Yeah, we are seeing a little bit of a mix that way. And the city does have some active projects to address canal banks and try to create some pathways. So those are great comments. I just want to talk a little bit more about housing types and sizes. Just because this was a goal in our existing plan. And it's also something that we're not always as familiar with, because depending on when our neighborhood was built and what our experience is as we move throughout the city, we're not always familiar with the different types of housing. So we like to just talk about these different housing types that are in that missing middle category. And these are actually all Idaho Falls examples, so something that you can see in the city today. We just want to work through those fairly rapidly. We're going to talk about each one individually with some kind of rapid fire questions, and we'll try to move through those slides quickly, and then we want to have more of a broader discussion about those at the end as well. So, okay, so where in your neighborhood would a twin home make sense? And you could also, if it doesn't make sense in your neighborhood, then you just don't have to answer that question. There might be areas where it wouldn't make sense. Your typical twin home is usually, as you see here in the picture, where you actually have two units that are attached together. They share the same wall, but they're usually on separate parcels. So you're having some home ownership or someone in each individual. So would that make sense somewhere in your neighborhood? And we appreciate your honest comments with regard to this too, because it really helps us inform us as we look at housing options going forward in our neighborhoods. Okay, we're seeing kind of a tie between anywhere and doesn't make sense in my neighborhood. Interesting. Okay. Can you click back on this slide because it's not letting me.
Okay, do you want to see? Can you roll?
Okay. So where in your neighborhood would a duplex make sense? So a duplex is going to be somewhat similar to a twin home, but the difference is a duplex is actually 2 units on the same parcel. So they're both under one ownership. Oftentimes you might have an owner of the unit live in one of the units, or maybe they're both rental units. But would that make sense somewhere in your neighborhood? Okay. We're seeing majority say it wouldn't. Again, thank you for the feedback. Okay, an accessory dwelling. So sometimes this makes some sense in more established neighborhoods, but an accessory dwelling would be something like a mother-in-law apartment. Oftentimes that may be referred to. And it could be something that's actually attached to your home. It could be built within the residence, or it could be even a detached structure, maybe a loft over a garage or something like that is often how you would see this come into the neighborhood. Okay, interesting splits. So 67% right now, we're up to 71 anywhere. Okay, interesting. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a townhome make sense? So townhomes generally, again, somewhat similar to a twin home. They are attached to each other, but you usually see them in rows of at least 3 or more. The most common for Idaho Falls is usually in a row of 4. Where in your neighborhood would those make sense? Okay, we're getting a little bit broader split this choice. Great. Again, this is really helpful for staff as we look at housing options and what makes sense, where should things go, where should things be allowed. So this is great, yes.
Just so I clarify my mind, is this a zoning question or is this something for the zoning of the city?
It could be.
Talk about adjacent zoning of some sort, or is that?
Right, so your zoning ordinance would typically dictate what would be allowed, what type of housing types are allowed in each area.
I'm trying to understand, okay.
Yeah. As you drive down a street though, it's not always obvious to you whether you're in a residential zone or maybe a mixed use zone, those types of things, but yeah, it would come. Zoning would be the way we implement any types of changes. Great clarifying question, thank you. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a bungalow court make sense? So our bungalow courts are more, we haven't seen a lot of those done very recently in the city, but a bungalow court usually is built around a center courtyard. So you're usually seeing more than 4 units for sure, but they do have green space and centered around a courtyard that everyone would share.
That would seem more appropriate for Idaho Falls and,
Okay.
more green.
Is it the green space that you find
Green
more
space,
appealing then?
more appealing.
Okay,
Maybe a small backyard and bungalow, something like that. My son lives in Portland, he lives in something like that. And he grows little bonsai trees and little spaces got up front, so
okay,
kind of that's the right idea.
okay, right, yes,
I agree that this is more aesthetically pleasing.
okay,
Even if a person doesn't live there, it's pleasing to look at as you're passing by.
okay. So the way that it relates to the rest of the neighborhood is important,
Yes.
I would guess. And then of course the green
If
space.
someone would appreciate living in the area because it's more,
Okay. Well, I think we're seeing online, 44% says anywhere, and so maybe they're feeling the same way, is that it's just more appealing that way. So have a comment online?
So Susan Blakely, the city needs more starter homes, style not apartments where people have 6-month lease, but places where people want to live for a few years and start their family or live with their small family. Not everyone can can afford or needs a single family style with 4, let's see, I'm not sure if I can expand this, I'm hoping I don't miss it, to 6 bedrooms.
Okay, great comment.
That's a good point.
Okay, so attainability is important, and that does come to this price point, which some oftentimes relates to square footage and housing types. Perfect. Great questions, great comments. Okay, moving on, is your neighborhood a courtyard apartment? So this is somewhat similar to the bungalow court, but you usually see here, you might have a little bit more units, and then maybe there's, 2-story or taller, a little bit more density there. Would that make sense? Interesting, we're seeing comments and feedback in all categories with this one. This is great. Okay. And then I think here our last one, where in your neighborhood would a mid-rise condo or apartment make sense? So again, if you think of that sort of spectrum from your sort of rural country home all the way through to apartment buildings, we've kind of moved through that spectrum, and your mid-rise condo or a mid-rise apartment, maybe not as dense as a very large apartment complex, something that's only 2-story, but you have definitely more units in there.
I would
Yes.
agree with mirror around major streets.
Okay, mirroring along major streets makes sense to you. Okay, for sure. When you have more people, you want to be able to get them out onto the street. Okay, this is great. Okay,
Carrie.
yes,
So, Nick says there are the townhomes on St. Clair and 25th that have that style. And so I'm assuming he's talking about the bungalow. I like the look of them, and the residents seem to like living there. Are you guys familiar with that housing? And is it bungalow style? Facebook's running a little bit behind, so.
right. Okay, awesome. Okay, I think that's a great comment. It's important how it feels, right? And I think we've heard that as a sort of a theme through the comments tonight, that it's important how it feels. All right. Okay, what concerns you with allowing more housing choice in your neighborhood? Now that we've talked through those different types of housing, what concerns do you have regarding that? Okay, we're seeing crime, and that's always for sure going to be a concern. More starter homes, which we've talked about.
There is a lot of open space. I guess old potato farms that are out that way,
Right.
they would seem a good place for the city to take charge and
The developer.
developers are killing.
Okay. Is it just a concern about the product they're producing, or what is it a concern?
homes and an HOA.
Okay. Okay,
That's good.
gotcha. Okay, perfect. Okay, balancing the different types of housing and avoiding a high concentration of a single type. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
The way the city's going and the streets are going, again, I'm talking about firehouses, fire hydrants. Well, if there was a large fire with high intensity, our climate's changing. So we talk about the freeze that went through South Houston, what's gonna happen here? If something happens like in California, San Diego, or something against the years.
Sure.
We have fire hydrants set up there. So they're 500 feet apart.
Right.
Get people out.
And get people out.
Okay.
And can we get out quickly? That's one of the neighborhoods we were shopping for homes, like there's only one way out of a huge HOA. It's like, what if there was?
Right. Okay. So life safety issues
Life safety
is a
issues?
concern for sure. Okay, definitely. Okay, any other comment? Yes.
Catherine Flumer asked a question. She said, your message about voting suggests that you can't vote, but you can answer. Can you clarify what you mean by that? We apparently can't vote by text from the response we received to text. And we let her know that text is only available for multiple choice questions. For the open-ended, you need to log in to pull everywhere and idahoFalls.com.
Okay, that's a great reminder. Yeah, so if you're trying to use it through text, then you're gonna run into difficulties with some of the questions and being able to respond. So it is best using the web browser. But I'd also comment too that this survey will actually stay live on the city website for a week. So if you're having difficulty tonight during the meeting, I apologize for that, but please take the time to go to the city website, go to imagineif.city. And the survey will be there and you're able to go through and actually answer all of these questions there as well. So we can capture your responses. We're definitely wanting to hear your feedback. Okay, so my last slide here on housing. As we talked a little bit about housing and housing choice, again, we don't think in the planning office of that is the one solution to some of the housing issues that we've got. But it's one that's been identified and one that we think we need more public input about. But so as we've talked about those different housing types, are there any that you had originally said they didn't make sense in your neighborhood, but now as we've talked through them, would they make sense if there were some specific design regulations that were attached to that housing type? So design regulations could be anything from limiting how tall a unit was, the size of a unit. For example, accessory dwellings right now in the city, where they're only allowed to be about 700 square feet. So they're basically kind of a loft size. Things like that. We can also talk about the form and how it looks in the neighborhood to make sure it's in keeping with each neighborhood. Does it make sense if they have some of those design regulations to have some of those other types of housing so that there is multiple choice and a little bit more diversity? Yes.
Looking in terms of trying to solve the population that's coming to town, you want more mid-rise condo homes, you want more apartment complexes to be able to allow people to have a place to live while they're waiting for a home to be built to
Or making that transition.
making that transition.
Sure, okay, great. Yeah, okay, so we're seeing some percentages across the board there. And that would be expected. That's great feedback. This has been really helpful for us. And again, I encourage people to continue to fill out the survey and we'll be looking at those and coming back out and chatting with each of the neighborhoods to see what really makes sense, what solutions there are. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Brian.
Forward. So good evening, I'm Brian Stevens and I will be your guide as we continue to imagine IF with connectivity. We have covered a lot already, and we have one more topic to discuss that we know affects your neighborhood every day. We would like to talk about how we get around and how your neighborhood is connected. We will start with a simple poll everywhere word cloud and then advance into several questions to gather your opinions for the future of Imagine IF. So we've already had folks plugging this in. You guys in the room? Well, so first off, where do you go most often? Please keep this focused to your region and primarily to the city. We understand that you routinely want to exit and return to the city conveniently. Are there anything that you would like to have someone in the other room enter? They may be able to plug these in. You guys have any thoughts?
The community park that's just down the street where I live, which is on Owens and East 25th.
Okay, so community parks.
Yeah, very, very well used by many people.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to give it a little bit more time. Do we have any comments from the chats? Okay, so it looks like we're seeing some fairly consistent work, store, parks are popping out as the primary keywords there. This will again be up. I just want to take a second and let this few more things populate. Wow, I'm impressed. That's quite a bit of feedback. I'm getting in advance. And so when we move off of this slide, you're gonna lose the ability to continue to enter. But the survey will be up tomorrow morning, and you'll be able to add at that point in time. So rank your most common mode of transportation. And we're very interested in how you get there. Please let us know what modes of travel you use. So it looks like right now, we kind of expected that the personal car would be the most popular. I'm just gonna give it a minute. We do have that lag.
Personal car, so.
Go ahead. Do you have something there?
I was gonna say walking or bicycling is a nice way to get around, in a nicer weather periods.
Okay, and some of these questions, we're not able to add your results when you talk in the room, but if you go in tomorrow, you guys can go log in, the video will be up and you'll be able to add your choices to the survey. And that will help us make decisions. So if you're not doing it tonight, you can do it at another time. You'll have up to a week. When we go to the next neighborhood meeting, the survey will be closed. And then, we'll compile those. And as Brad had said, when we come back to the neighborhood meeting for the second set of neighborhood meetings, we'll hopefully have some better ideas.
Probably ahead of your presentation, is there a discussion of bus service? Is there going to be a city transit service going to start?
So we have Gift, which is in the process. So we had Tripta. Tripta had some issues. And then now we have Gift that's in the process of starting back up. And so there will be some form in the near future of of public transportation in the city. I'm sure there's always room for improvement, but that's a good start to get back to having a service, right? So I'm going to move on to the next slide here. As expected, we would have thought that the personal car was going to be number one. We do have a lot of winter, but we do like to see that other things are being used. So thinking back to our discussion about the healthy communities, most communities in the United States spend the vast majority of their money on roads for the automobile. We need to keep in mind there are other important modes of transportation that are representative of how healthy our community is. Connectivity is the key to success of moving within our city.
Brian, I missed a comment here, but Susan Blakely is commenting on a previous slide, emphasized the community park and the green belt as probably where she goes for that word cloud. Sorry, I missed that one.
All right. Appreciate that. And then imagine the ability to get from place to place on foot or by alternate modes other than the auto. Connectivity is really two parts: places to go and facilities to get you there. So we're now going to move into some full everywhere clouds. So I get that flash in between slides. I want to make sure I'm not missing a question. So if it were more convenient to get to your common destination by bike or foot, would you use those methods more often? So we have some comments in the room.
Definitely.
Okay. And are there components that would make that, would help that?
Bike paths.
Like more bike paths?
City ordinance or city rules that they were starting in the road, have the pipeline, you have some here. There's no vehicles, bike paths.
Yeah, just a more pleasant, traveling experience while you're getting from point A to point B, not feeling that you're, that you're overpowered maybe by the traffic,
Okay, so just to maybe paraphrase that so that we understand it, would separation in between the bike path and the traffic lane help, or like, maybe expand on that idea a little bit more so we're really clear on what.
I think what you said, I don't know how to facilitate that, but I think what you said will definitely work for me, where we have a bike path, but it's literally right next to, very close to driving, driving lane. You have to really count on people, not texting and really paying attention. And it's more of a hurried method to simply get where you're going rather than an enjoyable experience of getting.
Okay, that's interesting feedback, Brad.
I have a couple of Facebook comments, one from Susan. She says, I love walking and running, but I have to drive to a park to do that safely. And Yessie says, getting rid of the blinking yellow light would make walking safer.
Can they expand on that? We may,
I'll ask.
you might just ask them to expand, and then, Ann, did you have anything? Okay, so it looks like we're pretty, we have a lot of agreement in that, if there were, if it was more convenient there, we would use it more often, right? So on to the next. Keep getting that flash in there, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing a slide.
Can I add one more thing to that? Because you had asked me to expand on that, and so I'm just thinking a little bit more. So maybe to put it in better terms is if we were biking or walking and we didn't feel like we were more of an afterthought of, okay, fine, we'll make some space for you, but there's not really space for you to feel comfortable, for you to feel safe. And for you to enjoy the journey. In other words, I guess I do want a bigger space. I do want more of a welcome space, not just a second thought. Okay, I guess we better make some space for walkers or bikers.
So a little less utilitarian and a little bit more park-like.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, that's okay. So on to the next slide. How would you rate your neighborhood's current level of bike and pedestrian connectivity to the daily goods and services? Can you use anything other than an auto to access daily needs such as eating establishments, retail, work, and exercise? Do we have any comments from the floor?
Walking is good, but biking is terrible.
We have sidewalks. We come from a city that had no sidewalks,
Okay.
so we love sidewalks, but that's for walking, but there's like one bike trail, I think, on John Adams. And then how do you get your bike from one to the other? But
Yeah, we have been connecting our community's plan, and we're slowly tackling those projects as we work through. Just looking at the slide, what we heard on the floor is being reflected in the slide. There certainly appears to be room for improvement in your particular area.
The person talked about the blinking yellow light, the blinking arrow,
yeah,
and that causes confusion with pedestrians. We see pedestrians all the time. First and Woodruff, they go across the street and blinking yellow light, and it's like it's a challenge between cars that are trying to cross. It helps traffic move, but not pedestrians.
So do you understand?
I do.
Okay.
So you're talking about a stoplight when you've got the
It's not
left
like you got the
for a left
blinking yellow
turn
arrow for a left turn,
yielding
but you can
to.
turn when traffic's clear.
but someone might be walking across the
Got it.
other way.
Thank you. That makes more sense now.
All right. So just looking at this to kind of summarize, it does look like there's a significant amount of improvement that can be made in this aspect in your specific neighborhood. So advancing. Okay, keep getting that one. Ann?
Elise on WebEx says she seconds with this comment on second thought.
Okay. All right.
And there are a few on Facebook too. Yes, he says when crossing the street, drivers forget to watch for people. They almost hit pedestrians. Mary Wilding says First Street got new light crosswalk, but needs some police presence to get enforced. And Nikki Gilbert said crossing First Street is not safe.
Okay. All right, and this is all good feedback, and as part of the comprehensive plan or the Imagine IF, in our initiative here, that's gonna help us, hopefully as a city, improve our conditions and bring these things to the forefront of what we really want as a community.
With the influx of new people moving from other areas, the way they drive in California, or the way they drive in Texas, or the way they drive in Utah. But they're all coming here, maybe public safety ads that says, you gotta yield the bike, you gotta yield the pedestrian. It's not always just a phenomenon, but somebody knows that they're supposed to slow down and stop and watch, look twice for motorcycles or things like that, so.
And that's a great,
That's not something I see watching TV or listen to the radio or.
those are great comments, I'm sure that's an area that we can improve upon, right, as a city and or a community, and really Idaho Falls is pretty proactive when it comes to our state. And so hearing some of this, like we can be the leaders for other cities by doing this. I'm just gonna move on to the next slide. I'm looking here.
Brian?
Yes,
Mary Wilding on Facebook says that kids have to cross First Street to have a playground at Falls Valley. Sugar Mill is closest city park. So the AMA needs to expand bridge so we can get out of our neighborhood and backs up to Colts Ends. Idaho Falls needs to put pressure on AMA to expand the bridge on First because it is affecting their citizens. And Susan Blakely says, I agree, the bike paths that we currently have feel like they were made as an afterthought.
okay. Anything on Facebook, Brad? Oh,
Sorry,
you
that
got
was
one
on
Facebook.
Facebook.
Okay. All right, so looking at this, I haven't been reading these comments. Brad, was there anything that popped out to you as you were scrolling through there?
No, and I think we are coming up on our time, so we probably ought to move
I'll
on.
keep moving on. So again, go into this survey. We're going to compile any things if we have some common ones. Survey isn't working exactly as we would hope. You would have been able to thumbs up, thumb down, but we'll go and we'll compile things that are similar, and report back. So we're going to move into the next section.
Brian, real quick, Steve Ellsworth on Facebook asks us, is a roundabout at the east end of Lomax being considered? The new apartments behind Dora Erickson going in, will residents have to utilize Woodruff or side streets to get home after work?
So I don't have a specific answer to that. Right now we're kind of in the gathering phase. But when we come back to the neighborhoods, we may have more, that's a good question, and we're going to do some research and we'll come back, and if that's a significant concern for the neighborhood, that's something we can convey to the rest of the city.
We have one more Facebook comment from Mary. John Adams bike path is dangerous with cars going 40. Now that the city increased it to 30, it needs to go back to 25.
Okay. That's well received. Let's see, walkable centers. One concept that we will refer to regularly as we go through the rest of the topics and discussion is the walkable center. Walkable centers are well connected to surrounding areas, accessible by multiple modes of transportation. They are the places where communities do things together, everything from working, shopping, learning, playing, and celebrating. Their key elements are that they include a mixed-use center, they are pedestrian-oriented, offer multimodal access, and provide house-scale transitions to adjacent neighborhoods. So this all the following conversation is going to be about these walkable centers. So that's a little bit of the definition. The next slide is going to expand on that a little bit. This is a snip from our missing middle housing study performed by Opticos last fall. Please take a moment to read along with me. We will be asking what you imagine in the following slides. So neighborhood mini commercial employment areas, closely integrated with the residential components of the neighborhood, pedestrian and bicycle friendly, a place you can get to quickly for daily needs. So, and then these are the bullet points. Most things within a 5 to 10 minute walk from home and work, streets designed to enable and encourage walking, and access to public transit, and then incremental change. Keep getting that flash, it causes me to go back. So, what are your thoughts and reactions to the idea of a walkable center in your neighborhood? So, and we would love to hear what you have imagined. And then just looking at these, a second green belt, need to see more. Let's see. Solves many of the transportation and connectivity issues. Homeownership needs to be focused on not more rentals. Great, but they have to be connected to transportation options. Very positive amenity at the local neighborhood scale. You know, so
Thinking in terms of area two, we're talking about the loss of, I mean, we just got here, but the loss of the Smith store over on Woodruff and John Adams.
Yes.
The loss of the Smith store, that's a place where you could have walked and got your goods and carried your groceries home. From a lot of places around that area too, that we're talking about. Now you're at Winco,
Yeah, Winco's a little bit further
But that's-
north,
but as far as our area, that's, yeah, unless you
Right.
drive.
right. Well, you're a bit further north than I am, but I know it's
But
probably.
bicycle, carry something.
so we've seen a reduction in grocery stores for sure in the city, right?
Walmart, Amazon, yeah, all that's.
And so you know, with these ideas in the future, I mean, we can come back and that could be something that we focus on, you know, trying to get more smaller grocery stores more convenient.
Something help with that abandoned building.
I thought, and this was a few years ago, but I thought when they developed down there, I know it's got a name, is I'm missing it right now, but down there by Wild Wings and by Mackenzie River and all that, they
Oh,
were
Snake
developing.
River Landing.
Yes, Snake River. I thought when they initially were planning that it was going to be a little micro community and was supposed to be more of a place for the residents in that area to go for their town business. But what actually ended up moving in there were places like, you know, insurance agencies and title companies and things like that, that in my opinion, and you know, I mean, they gotta go somewhere. I'm not saying that they're bad business, I mean, the whole area is nice. But as far as the idea that I had heard was behind that initially was for it to be a micro community, you could walk and get your goods and have your restaurants and what have you. It really didn't turn out to be that way, and I thought maybe it went that direction, the other direction, because it wasn't being purchased or rented out to the right kinds of businesses, but it had to be developed, and so.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. There's still a lot of vacant land down there, and so you know, they're you know, we may see some of that evolve into something different. Some of those businesses may rotate out, other businesses come in. You know, there's an evolution always in planning world. Okay, I'm getting you the signal to keep this moving. We're about to the end of our time. So I am going to move on to the next slide here. I appreciate everybody's feedback. So does your neighborhood have a walkable center? This, just take a quick moment. I'm going to advance through this fairly quick. It's looking like the consensus here is no. So moving on to the next slide. So if you said no, the previous slide, where do you imagine a walkable center should go in your neighborhood? And I'm going to give you a minute. So incorporate into new developments and in the center of residential blocks. Okay. So any thoughts from the floor? Anyone on the chat? Okay, so we're getting a little bit here. Dirt lot behind my neighborhood. If you could expand on the dirt lot behind my neighborhood, that would help us maybe target an area, so an intersection nearby or, something that's identifiable for us at the city to pinpoint. And then near Sandy Downs, okay. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next one. So if you said yes, in a few words, describe where your neighborhood's walkable center is. So Shamrock Park, but it's private. Okay. Doesn't have to be in the center. A perimeter walkable center is also possible. Community park, but it is 3/4 mile walk from my home. Okay. All right, and then I'm gonna click on to the next one, and I'm gonna turn the time. We're missing a slide there. Well, so moving on, I'm gonna hand the controls back to Brad, and he's gonna close out the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. No, thank you for all those, great comments and feedback. I do want to back up. I'm sorry, I gave Brian the move finger and then it went really fast. So I want to go back to this for just a second. Because this is a really important idea for us to know about your neighborhood. Whether you said yes or no, where is the most logical place for a walkable center where you can walk, bike easily for daily goods and services? So I want to give this question just a little bit more time to marinate. That's okay. Yes, sir.
So you're talking about a place that's has an open space that can be built and added to, or?
Could be existing development, can go a little bit more vertical, could be an open space, could be anything, anywhere you think it makes sense.
Someone Smith's, and
So Smith's,
what's gonna happen to that building? They get into a homeless shelter, yeah.
But I wonder if you toggle back to the no one, we might have gotten some.
okay.
So near Family First, where new homes are being built.
Yeah, so our staff member, if you could enter the Smith's area, that would be on the app. Sorry, I really didn't mean to rush you quite that much.
Well, so, and then we have several comments here. Mary Wilding, make a dead end street in neighborhood. And then she also says the Smith's grocery store area is possible. And there is 2 empty lots on First and Hit.
So I'm seeing those aren't popping up, but I think that's because on the back end of what we're doing here, it's tough to go back. There we go. There we go. Smith's area, perfect. Okay, thank you for adding some more context to that. Soccer complex is in one here. Okay, well, I want to be respectful of your time. We told you we'd be done at 7:45. We have just a couple minutes to wrap up. Oh, go ahead.
I thought of an open area. It's on the corner of, I believe it's Woodruff and Sunnyside, across from KJ's, and also on the other side, it's across from the fire station.
Yep. You know, right where you're talking about. Yeah, so Woodruff and Sunnyside. We could add that one in there too, and then we'll go to the wrap up. A few more pop up. So we'll make sure we get Woodruff and Sunnyside, and then we'll move on.
So, and a bunch of these are coming from the Facebook.
Okay. Lots of those for the Smith's parking lot. Perfect. Okay, we'll make sure that Sunnyside and Woodruff gets added for sure. That's an ideal spot. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the wrap up is ask, as I mentioned, spoiler alert, what did we not cover that you were hoping we would? I'm going to do a couple of calls to action and tell you where we go from here. What's the roadmap like? So let's start here. What did we not cover or not cover enough? Looks like we've got some responsible choice of appropriate resources. I'd like to know Mayor City Council's thoughts. Okay, yeah, actually, that's a good point. And we will integrate that into the next session as we finish completing a strategic plan for the city as well. High density home ownership. Okay, yeah, interesting. Sidewalk regs, streetlights, sidewalk regs. Okay. Any other comments that you would have from those in the room?
If there was going to be a consideration for a residential street, as I had mentioned that I live on, East 25th, becoming wider to accommodate more traffic, would that be something that was simply told to the residents it was going to happen, or would it be open for discussion, a forum, and more of a voting kind of situation?
Yeah, good question. So I'm going to add that as just making sure we communicate like future projects. Like how do we talk about those with communities and neighbors, especially those affected, like if you're fronting that street. Did you have a comment as well?
Think of easy access to be able to get across town.
Okay. Oh, so outside the neighborhood level.
In the neighborhood, you're going like this, but to be able to cross town.
We need to build a freeway.
Yeah, our daughter takes first in and across the Sunnyside and goes to school. We got to transfer to Hill. So to take them that way, you say you hit less lights on Hammond Road. But some way to get across the city, a loop or something that's going to help you get from one area to the next.
Okay.
I don't know if the answer would be.
Okay. So what that does tell me, we've got a couple that like talk about future plans. So maybe we've missed that part of our discussion because there are answers to what you're talking about. We really haven't talked about. So if we could just maybe add to this list, talking about future plans and how they, what's already in the works, how we address some of those issues and getting across town. Do we have our show?
Yeah, I'm just trying to. So Susan Blakely, there isn't a lot of empty space that can become a walkable center. And that's going back to the previous question, but then there's dog parks just west of Compass Academy. 25th Street is 25 with islands. John Adam is 30 without. I feel speed limits need revisited in some areas.
Okay, great. Anything else on WebEx over there? Okay, great. So I'm going to let this continue to populate and then move on. They'll continue to be able to answer. So let me tell you where we go from here. So for those online, those here in the room, now through the end of March, we are in our public discussions and outreach phase for the first part of that. So we're doing this. We have an online survey that covers the citywide questions, some of what you're bringing up here. If you go to imagineif.city, there's a link to that survey. That'll be up for a few more weeks. That'll ask more of those citywide questions. And we're also doing some focus groups and, as you're aware, doing these neighborhood meetings. So what we'll do is we'll take all this information, and as we sift through it, we're going to look for themes. What have a lot of people said? What have they said geographically? What have they said broadly? And based on those themes, we'll try to come up with approaches and solutions, projects and ideas that we'll bring back to you in this public discussion phase 2 at the end of the summer. So on that note, we've added a piece of paper and some a pen here in the back. If you provide us your email address, those here in the room. For those online, if you could put your email address either in the Facebook, well, you may not want to put it on Facebook, but email it to us.
ImagineIF.city.
Yeah, imagineif.city, that's the website, but if you'll email us at imagineif@idahofallsidaho.gov, send us your email, we'll keep you in the loop and update you on everything we're doing. If you're on WebEx, you can enter it into the chat. But we want to make sure we connect with you later because you've taken the time and invested with us to give us your ideas. We want to make sure that we captured them and that the ideas proposed are worth pursuing. So that's what we'll do in July and August, is we'll come back and do this and make sure that we captured things correctly. So I've told you 2 of the calls to action. One, give us your contact info. Take the citywide survey, if you would be so kind. Imagineif.city, go there. And then the third one, and you'll hear more about this in the next couple of weeks, but if you have some memories of Idaho Falls, go to, on that same website, imagineif.city, there's a link to leave us a memory. And you can record a video, you can upload photos, we have some prompts on there, and then it's not just about memories, there is one prompt that is, what are your big ideas for Idaho Falls? That's, I think, prompt number 6. You can click on that link, it'll take you to another system, you can take a video of yourself, and we'll hear your big ideas. We want to know what you want to see in Idaho Falls. So again, I want to make sure that I thank you again. I really do deeply value those who engage with us at this early stages of planning. This is when it's so important. So we appreciate your time. If you have any quick questions, I do want to be respectful of your time. I'm happy to answer what I can about process, and if we've missed something, feel free to let us know. Otherwise, if you'll give us your email, keep in contact with you. Thank you again, everybody, and appreciate your time this evening.